Chiefs and they end up losing because they don't have their quarterback, while the Titans get rest, while the Titans don't get punished in any way, even though they've had a total outbreak. So you're basically getting rewarded so far for an outbreak and you're getting punished for containing it. You can't have that. But everything's on the table because of the bare naked greed involved here. We will move games for hurricanes. We will move games for fires. We will find the place to play the games for money, no matter how many bodies we have to send into the sickness. This is something that is rare, that you get it this bare naked. They're going to get to their money just like baseball got to their money. And it doesn't matter if they have to compromise the structural integrity. Maybe they go with forfeits. Maybe they go with winning percentages. It doesn't seem like all the teams are going to end up playing 16 games.
Yeah, this is such a difficult thing to deal with for the league, and they should be better at it. I want to be clear about that too. But it's so difficult because they don't want to have to punish anybody for anything. And a forfeit is the nightmare scenario because, as Dan alludes to, that means you're losing a game, a televised game worth millions and millions of dollars to make a point. And the point is really important, right? The point is that, hey, NFL players, college football players, young athletes, you may be fine. But the thing we learned 7 months ago about this virus, that, you know, if you're asymptomatic and otherwise healthy, you can invisibly and easily spread it to people who are going to suffer from it to the tune of maybe 210,000 deaths plus and counting. That is the issue. So I want there to be a point made, but this for the NFL is like dealing with their kids, right? And their kids who are like staying out late and partying and doing all that stuff. And the parents in this metaphor are saying, hey, if you don't stay in and abide by curfew, we're going to sell our house at a discount. Like, it punishes themselves more than it does the kids. And that's the bind the NFL is in right now.
Well, the bind the NFL is in right now is that we're asking questions about protocol that is entirely unclear. If you have an actual protocol, then we would know what happens in this situation when a team tests positive. But instead, we're in a situation where some places are reporting that maybe a forfeit is on the table, and other places are reporting that that's not going to be on the table because we don't really know. And the other thing is, we may know that there's an outbreak happening with the Titans, but we don't know how many other teams have broken protocol and just happened to have not gotten it, but could still continue to get it in the future. The other thing that's important is that the Tennessee Titans, what they violated was they gathered for a workout. We may be talking about players who are playing football, a sport that we've all said is very difficult and you have to play at a very high competitive level. They're not feeling like they're getting enough practice, enough workout. They're not in good enough shape. So they gather they're not partying, they're working out. And it's like, how do you punish them for wanting to be good at football when what we're really learning here is that maybe football shouldn't have moved ahead? And if it did, it certainly needed a much stronger protocol. And now they're in a pickle with fairness of the game and equity across the league. It's just, this is a huge mess of their own creation.
And that is a good point, Katie, because in my metaphor, I'm talking about the kids misbehaving and all that. But in this case, in reality, they're doing exactly what you say. These football players are merely doing what they have been trained to do and coached to do their entire lives, which is play football at any cost necessary. Practice, get better at any cost necessary. Unfortunately, in this case, the cost can be a life.
It's a very dark note to end on. Does anyone want to say something funny?
We need the joke at the end.
The cost could be a life.
Hold on.
The cost could be a death.
Yes.
Jesus.
Yep.
Are you cool with J.J. Watt deciding to fire Bill O'Brien?
Oh, Captain America, that was the last straw. Any number of players could have had problems with Bill O'Brien. Hopkins, you're out of here. But when you mess with Captain America, then all of a sudden there's a player revolt. Now, we should have seen this coming, okay? Because during the offseason, J.J. Watt answered a question about Bill O'Brien's coaching so carefully that it told you everything you needed to know. This is laugh out loud funny.
You're there on the inside. What makes Bill O'Brien a good head coach? He's got 2 new play callers with him. It's a little bit different role. What makes him good at leading this team?
I think his job is to do just that. Is to lead the team. Is to obviously he's more of an offensive guy than a defensive guy. So it's to lead the overall team, but then to lead the offense. And now other roles as well is to general manage, is to do everything within the organization. That's his role, and I think that's what obviously he excels at.
The discomfort. Don't even listen to the words. Just watch the discomfort, like the fiddling with the hat, the soothing of the body. That was an uncomfortable place that J.J. Watt was in. And now the reports are that after starting with games against Kansas City and Baltimore and Pittsburgh and starting 0-4, that they were done with him. And I understand why they'd be done with him. We've all been questioning Bill O'Brien for a while from the outside because he got Laramie Tunsil in exchange for next year's number 1 and number 2 that now go to the Miami Dolphins, while getting DeAndre Hopkins out of there, but not getting something commensurate with that. So basically, he traded a lot more for Laramie Tunsil than he got for DeAndre Hopkins, and that's where you start with some of this stuff. He built a team that's a little bit broken, and the credibility that he had is lost with us and his players.
It must be noted with that video that J.J. Watt is very good at that. It reminds me of a couple years ago when I asked him about Brock Osweiler, his quarterback, and wanted to see him fumble, for lack of a better word, for a way to describe him without actually describing the reality of him. And he does it, and he does it very well, which is why it's so remarkable when we see him sort of not doing that anymore, posting a picture of the sun shining through onto Energy Stadium after Bill O'Brien is fired. He's sort of stepping out of his usual polished media, I don't even know what you call it, where you basically just describe what a coach and a general manager does because you don't want to talk about what this coach and this general manager do. There were other players on the team too. Deshaun Watson, I'm paraphrasing obviously, but his point basically boiled down to like, well, it's a business and things happen, which is not the tone. You always hear players go above and beyond to be like, you hate to see the coach leave. And that's not really happening here. So while I'm sure if you know how these things work, you know Bill O'Brien will probably get another job somewhere else. I think it's worth noting that Romeo Crennel now is the interim coach, and he's been an interim head coach before, but he's also been on this team. He's not a new guy that they're bringing in. Obviously, that's how an interim coach works. And if he can motivate this team who already knows him, who if they had an issue with him, it will remain. If he can motivate this team, that would be a really good argument that maybe Romeo Crennel should be getting looks for head coaching gigs in the future.
So I want to point out that I do think J.J. Watt is good at that kind of rhetorical technique Katie described, but his goodness is mostly an indictment of us because it was and is effective, but only if the people listening are expecting so little. It's like a defense attorney is asked, is your client guilty? And the attorney goes, my client's job is to be not guilty. My client's job is to be not guilty, which is defined as not committing crimes. And then he just sort of continues on from there. What's especially nuts about this, though, is that the owner of the Texans is Cal McNair. He should not have needed a J.J. Watt revolt to make this call. In fact, Bill O'Brien, for reasons that are now obvious to everybody, should never have had both the head coach and GM title in the first place because you have a conflict of interest there, right? As Dan said, send out all the draft picks in the future because guess what? Bill O'Brien, the head coach, he's Mr. President. He needs all that help right now. And instead, what we get is a disaster like this. And Katie is bringing up Romeo Crennel, which makes me realize that the only guy who has that title now, I think, actually besides Ron Rivera, who was given it by a desperate franchise, is of course Bill Belichick, who is head coach and GM and is great at it. You know who is not good at any of the stuff related to coaching football? The people who have worked for Bill Belichick. The idea that that guy did all of that with Romeo Crennel and Bill O'Brien and the assemblage of other dudes, that is the greatest testament to the New England Patriots that exists.
Coming up next on my son's TV show.
Just know that what Tom Brady does, literally, is have his center
river of sewage that they gave us last Thursday. And what you're going to end up seeing with Tom Brady, I think, over the course of this season, as he ages differently than anyone in the history of quarterbacking or anyone in the history of youth, is you're going to see inconsistency from a guy who has been remarkably consistent for his career. The way the aging process is supposed to work with normally aging athletes is that you can still bring it on occasion. You just can't bring it as brilliantly as consistently. It's why Shaquille O'Neal referred to himself as the big Aristotle. You are what you consistently do. As he ages at 43 years old, you're going to see more pick sixes, and you're going to see on occasion the Tom Brady who responded from that pick six last week by going 15 of 16 for 4 touchdowns and 250 yards.
I did not have Dan Levitard being the person on this show to accurately quote Aristotle, but that was, in fact, an accurate quote of Aristotle. I would say that Tom Brady aging differently is my focus here because, on the one hand, he has actually been fine, more than fine this season, right? 3 touchdowns 2 weeks ago, 5 touchdowns last week. The Buccaneers may well win this division ahead of the Saints. They look like the best team so far. But in terms of how Tom Brady is aging, there was a story in this ESPN.com piece by Jenna Lane that will never dislodge itself from my brain because apparently Tom Brady really doesn't like the sweatiness of the center that he receives the football from. So when we joke about how Tom Brady is the old guy and all of his teammates are relative babies, just know that what Tom Brady does literally is have his center put baby powder and a towel in his nether region so that
nice.
Tom Brady can receive the ball
nice.
in the way that he prefers.
Courteous.
And he's also never eaten a strawberry. The man is obviously strange and weird, but the question is he washed? And the answer, though the petty in me would like to say yes, because of course, when you get in a big fight with your old best friend, you want to see something bad happen to them for a little. You want to see other people realize that they're not that great. But the reality in me is like, he's 43 years old. He threw 5 touchdowns in a game. And this brings up the real issue with this question. We have to stop taking words we hear on the internet and saying them in contexts where they do not belong. Words have meaning, right? You don't throw 5 touchdowns in a game and are washed. Or washed again, which doesn't even make sense. Like, defending a woman on the internet does not make you a simp. And most importantly, one that I know bothers Mina and I is when people say this didn't age well. The point of that is supposed to be to take a tweet that was sent in a completely different context that now looks bad given some new revelation that we have about you. It's not, I think the Titans are going to win, and then the Titans lose, and you're like, this didn't age. It doesn't work. Words have meaning, and it's very important that we keep to those meanings so that communication does not break down.
Wow, Katie,
Thank
your
you.
answer was super lit.
I just love that Katie respected the question and obsessed about the word washed. And Pablo wants us to forget that all he did in that segment was say that Tom Brady's center should wash. He should wash because Tom Brady doesn't like his nether regions. Like, that was not very